But tonight, we're very excited to have Kazu Kibuishi. So, woohoo, yeah. Kazu is the writer and artist of the New York Times best-selling Amulet graphic novel series, published by Scholastic Graphics. He's also the editor / art director / cover artist of the Explorer and Flight comic anthologies, and the creator of the webcomic Copper. His debut graphic novel, Daisy Cutter: The Last Train, won a YALSA Best Books for Young Adults Award in 2005. In 2012, he illustrated the covers for the Harry Potter 15th Anniversary Edition paperbacks. So, some additional Kazu trivia, really quickly. Kazu is fourth-generation Japanese-American. His great-grandfather opened the oldest Japanese grocery store in the US, called the Katagiri Store, open since 1907, and it is located in New York City. Kazu began drawing comics at the age of 5. Sometime after that, he graduated from film studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara, moved to LA to pursue a career in the entertainment industry. He currently works as a full-time graphic novel artist. He now lives in the Pacific Northwest with his wife, author Amy Kim Kibuishi, and their children. So, I'm going to turn things over very shortly. But after the event, please remain seated if you want to get your book signed. If you do not want it signed, go ahead, exit out the main doors. But we will call you row by row. But that's it from me. So now please join me in welcoming Kazu Kibuishi.
Thank you. I'm going to go move over to that station over there. I better turn off my phone. Just turn this off. Airplane mode. All right. Okay. So, today I actually have a different presentation than the one I normally give, because I wanted to give a little bit more time to the drawing part of this presentation. I'm actually going to paint something for you guys with a tablet here that I have set up next to my computer. I'm gonna paint some kind of a scene. Usually it's some kind of a landscape. I'll just paint that while answering questions. So if you have any questions, store them up and think about what you want to ask, and I'm going to answer them later when I'm doing the painting, all right? And I think I have sound here too. So I actually have a trailer for the new books. You know what? Why don't we start with that? Do you guys, I don't know, guys saw the trailer? So let's see if this works. So that book trailer was produced by a friend of mine, Denver Jackson, who is unreal. He did that in a week, animated all that stuff and everything. I don't know how he does it, but even the music is original. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? That's not like stock music or anything. It was made just for the trailer. And then someday we'll see a movie, right? Producer called me today, by the way, said things are good, he's busy. And he said, oh, congrats on the release of the book. I'm going to talk with the director right now. We'll talk about the movie. Let's see if we can get it made. No promises. All right. Okay. So, so Amulet 8. This is the 10th year of Amulet. Amulet 1 was released in 2008. So I've been on this journey for a long time. When Amulet 1 came out in 2008, we sold 300 copies of the book. So it was a really good thing that I was already committed to doing this, regardless of the results. And that Scholastic had the vision and the foresight to tell me that it's okay. They encouraged me to stick with everything. They said this is just how it goes. People will read it later. And it wasn't really until Amulet 5 that I was able to do this for a living as a full-time comic artist working on a series like Amulet. I was doing a lot of other jobs up until that point. So it's really, built over a long period of time. In fact, Amulet was first drawn, the very first pages of Amulet were drawn in 1998, 97, 98. And, I was in college when I gave it a try, and I decided to put it away because I realized that drawing comics is really hard. It was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. Right. So it is a bit surreal to look back and see that there's about what is it? There's a little over 1,600 pages of comics now in the Amulet story. It is one long story, so you can kind of consider it one novel. And then we have another 208-page or 225-page book coming, right, when I start working on Amulet 9. I haven't worked. I've been doing a lot of research, but we haven't drawn any pages. All right, so when I was a kid, I have some pictures that my mom sent me. I found one with a mullet, where I had my hair like this, and I had my Bart Simpson T-shirt. I was a straight B- C+ student. That was me in school. I just thought, well, I just want to pass my classes so I can go skate around the park. And I never really thought of myself as like one of the top students or doing well at really much of anything. I really wanted to play some baseball, but then I thought, well, you know what? I don't think that's going to be a career. So I just kept at drawing, but I didn't even think that would be a career. In fact, I always anticipated, as a kid, being a doctor. And so when I was a kid, I drew a lot of comics because I was afraid that would come to pass. I thought I would be a doctor. I wouldn't mind being one, actually. Sometimes I think that maybe I should have done that. But it's great that my mom and my dad are happy that I chose this path now. But yeah, here I am in the corner of my room. There's my superhero comic posters on the wall, my all-star jacket from Little League, and a desk that I never once actually used. My mom bought this for me at a garage sale. She asked me to pose for this photo, and then I promptly moved over to the dining table where I always drew. I was like, Mom, I don't need this. She's like, oh, my little artist, you're gonna use this. It's gonna be great. I'm like, and then the table would rock back and forth, and I'd be drawing and be like, this is terrible. Why would anybody use this, especially on carpet? And so I never actually used it. Well, I tried, but... And so here's a picture it took just last week, or a couple of days ago, of me with my grandma and my mom. They're probably the biggest reason I do comics like the way I do them now. When I was in high school, I was actually offered work to be a professional comic artist, And I read the books that my potential employers were drawing, and I thought, man, I really wouldn't share these with my mom or my grandma. In fact, I didn't even like reading them. And I talked to the artists, and they're like, yeah, we don't like reading them either. And they were nice guys. They were at a studio called Extreme Studios for some of the older folks like me who remember all that. Like, do you guys remember Extreme Comics? A lot of really nice guys were working at that studio. They are now the heads of concept design at the Marvel Studios, by the way. So if you remember all those Rob Liefeld comics you made fun of, the artists who did that are now making Iron Man and the Infinity War and all that stuff. Same guys. But I decided I wasn't going to go into comics, mostly because I wanted to be able to share my comics with my mom and my grandma. I felt like that they had to be proud of what I was doing. Plus, I was far more interested in literature in high school. And so I started writing essays and short stories. I wrote a short novel. I wrote a screenplay, made some films, and I just worked on my writing, and I tried to quit drawing for a number of years. So instead of going to art school, where a lot of my friends who were artists, they went to Art Center, CalArts, RISD in Rhode Island. They would go, or SVA in New York City. They would go to the art schools. I decided that I was not going to go to art school. I decided instead of learning how to draw better, which I felt that I could already do myself, I wanted to learn about what to put in my drawings. And so I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I have a degree in film studies, which means I have a degree in watching movies and not making movies. It's not actually a movie making. There's no film production degree there. You can make films, but they kind of recommend students not do that because they usually go into massive amounts of debt. Not that the school isn't already putting them there. I was at this school, and I actually got funding for my films through the mountain bike club. I was a mountain biker. I made films about mountain biking. I made various films with various grants that I could get, and I went through to school mostly on grants and things like that. UC Santa Barbara was a good, at the time, an inexpensive option for me, but it also allowed me to work not on just on my studying skills, which I learned plenty of. I actually spent a lot of time in the library here studying old movies, studying the history of movies, studying the history of the movie industry. I was going through microfiche in the library, and I would just be there like all night long reading old articles. And I would write papers about old black and white movies that I loved and things like that. And I also worked right here in the middle of campus at the newspaper, the UCSB Daily Nexus, and I drew about 5 drawings a night. And this is where I learned to become a professional artist. It was an accidental thing. I actually wasn't very fast at drawing in high school, and I knew that was going to keep me from being a pro. So I used this experience here to become faster at drawing. Wasn't even sure what I was going to do with it, but I just wanted, just for myself, to know that I could be a professional someday. All right? So I'm just going to go right to Amulet 8, because I think a lot of you have already read Amulet up until 8, right? Now some of you have now read 8, probably like while I was eating dinner. Yeah. So in Amulet 8, we're going to learn a little bit more about Trellis's past. Emily's past too, right? Or past or future. It's more about Emily. Oh, by the way, my colorist, Jason Kufo, is sitting right back there, with his hand up there. And so when you look at these spectacular colors, you can credit him with a lot of this. We do have a team that works on the books, but Jason is the one who has to lay down the groundwork for the work that's going to be done. And so these are all Jason's work right here. Okay. And you guys saw in the trailer, this is the stuff that you'll see there. And if you haven't read the book already, you'll be seeing this soon. Probably tonight, right? Okay. I'm a mountain biker, and I wanted to get mountain bikes in here. I was really happy that I was able to get bikes in there, and for it to make sense. I was actually surprised that there was an opening for that. I studied a lot about suspension design and mountain bikes and things like that. So I knew well enough to cover up the suspension design inside there so that I don't get sued for patent infringement. So it's mysterious how this bike operates, but trust me, there's some really awesome stuff going on in there. Okay. All right, so in the production process of Amulet, it's a bit like this. And this is how it begins. I actually make a big mess. Just make a big mess of stuff. I just write my dialogue like this. I'll do concept design and costume design and character design and just get their faces and kind of the emotion of the moment. Write dialogue like this. Here's a scene in the book. It's happening at the same time as this scene. And so I'll look for certain story beats that I want to put into the story, and I'll draw those as these sketches to essentially inspire myself later on when I'm having to write the story. And then when I have all this laid out, and I have probably about 10, 15 pages of sketches and things like that, I start thumbnailing. And this is the rehearsal process. This is what I think of as like just getting footage, just starting to get footage that I'm going to probably cut, probably move aside. I just want to have something to work with. I like to tell people that I actually don't know how to make a good book, like right out of the gate. I can't just produce it. But I'm a pretty decent editor, and a pretty decent editor of my own work. So what I do is I produce a lot of work, and I look to find the bits and pieces that work for me, and I keep those and then build around that. Okay? So I build off of my mistakes. Sometimes they're just total mistakes, and they become the book. So if you're drawing things like this, I recommend drawing a lot and just throwing a lot of stuff away. This is what scenes would look like. And I would do this 8 to 10 times, sometimes even 20 times, and then I even throw scenes away because it's not working at all. Sometimes I get it on 2 or 3 or 4 tries. It's very rare. But if that happens, I'm really excited. That saves me a lot of time. Okay. So once the scene looks good, I'll pencil it. It looks kind of like this. There's a font that's based on my handwriting that I plug into where the text bubbles are going to go. And then I'll ink it with a graphite pencil. I actually don't use pens to ink because it's a bit slow and it hurts my hand. Over time, you're just gonna have to build tolerance for your wrist and your hand and things like that. I actually hold my pencil a weird way. I hold it like this. So I keep the pencil like between these 2 fingers, and I just wrap it around like this. And I try to use my shoulder and my arm, my full arm, to draw, so that I don't put too much pressure on my hand. I recognized this when I was a kid, that, and partly because I used to play baseball, a lot of baseball, and I used to have to pitch. So, I knew that just the way you grip something can really affect how you perform. It can also send you into injury. Like you can injure your arm if you don't throw correctly, if your mechanics are off and you're going to mess up your rotator cuff or something. So I applied that to the drawing. I even had teachers try to teach me out of this, and they said, I'm doing it wrong. And I was like, no, I think that I may be doing it right. And I think maybe we should reconsider this, because if I do this, I am going to have to stop in about an hour. And so I draw like this. You should try it at home. All right, so once it's inked, go from that to that. Easy, right? No, actually, this is one of the most fun parts of the process. I tend to be the kind of person who likes to do everything himself, But if I'm going to ask somebody to help me, I want to make sure that they're having a good time too. And I feel like when Jason's given a lot of leeway, he ends up making some beautiful artwork, and I could tell he's having fun with it. And so oftentimes I actually don't. I even told him basically just to erase this stuff, and I think, or maybe he just decided. I don't know if you remember, but with that stuff, that was kind of limiting, I think, the paintings, and so he just decided to redo that. But I try to give him as much freedom as he can have. Because what you always want to see in all art is somebody creating something new and being excited about it. And that's really what people pick up the book for. I think they can sense that somebody's really discovering something or enjoying the work that they're doing. And I have to essentially set that up for myself as well. So when I write the story, I actually don't write it all out and then go back and draw it. I'm actually on the journey with the characters, and I'm figuring it out as we go. In fact, my editor does not know what happens in this book until it's done, right, Jason? Pretty much in the case of this book, she didn't read the whole thing until like the last week that we had. So it put her in a bad spot, I think, a little bit. But she has trusted us all these years, and she's just been amazing. But I needed her to trust me on this one because it did require every extra minute that I took to make it. This book was very difficult. All right, so I gave myself a lot of time this time to paint for you guys, because I want to make sure I get to do a nice drawing for you. And while I do this, Jason, you gotta, well, you're taking photos now. But Jason, do you have a mic? Okay, oh no, there's one right here. It's right up right up here. So you guys can ask Jason questions too. I'm just going to sit up here like a piano player and talk with you guys while I paint. So for those of you who are just bored with my answers, you can just watch the drawing, and vice versa. I'm using a program called Adobe Photoshop. This is what Jason and I work on. A lot of you probably have messed around with it before. I don't know how many of the younger readers have actually tried Photoshop, but it's a program that was designed to process photographs. It was actually, I believe it was designed specifically for movie special effects early on at ILM, then developed at ILM by the Knoll brothers, I believe. And it's an industry standard program that can manipulate photography, but a lot of artists found that it was a really great painting and drawing tool as well. And so what I'm able to do with this program is I can draw a scene, I can illustrate a setting, and then I can apply lighting techniques and things like that of a cinematographer does, and I can apply it to my drawings. So it's a combination of painting and camera work, and I think it's a lot of fun. Okay. So I didn't go to art school, and I actually didn't know how to color anything until after I graduated from college. So you don't have to be a prodigy with this stuff. I mean, you can start now, and you learn in a few years how to do a lot of this stuff. It's not impossible. Just trying to get past all that time that you're not good at it. That's the hard part. The hard part with anything, I think, is sticking with something. Finding that one thing and just sticking with it. I went into the film industry. I worked in architecture. I worked in so many different fields because I thought it didn't seem very credible to do this work. But I learned a little bit of something along the way at every place in all these different industries. And I think I'm all the better for it. So with that, I'll go ahead and start answering questions if you have them. Jason, can you help me with taking questions?
Sure, you guys want to ask a question here?
Oh, it looks like we got a mic there. So I guess Jason could answer questions. You can answer.
What was it like to just invent the Amulet series and then figure out it was one of the biggest hits?
To figure out it's one of the biggest hits? Is it?
Yes.
Whoa! No, I know, I didn't. Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know. Well, let's see. That's a good way to answer this. Well, as an author, it's always nice to see that people are reading your work. But I will say, as a kid, I was really, really confident. And before I went into doing this, I remember talking to my friends, and I said, look, there's no such thing, essentially, as a graphic novelist. At the time, when I started, graphic novels didn't quite exist. It was just comic books. And so I said, okay, in order for me to be able to do this job, I'm essentially going to have to help invent the form and then be the best at it. and then he said, well, do you think you could do it? I was like, yes. He's like, oh, you should do it. I was like, all right. I'm going to have to go invent basketball and then be LeBron James. Yeah, I mean, I try not to be too presumptuous, but I did think that it was going to be well-read eventually. But I knew that we were in a place where people weren't really familiar with this type of thing. However, I travel around the world, and I have seen what comics, the kind of effects that comics have had in other countries. You know, a lot of my family, they're Japanese. You know, so going to Japan, if you see comics, it's all comics. Like, comics are on their trains. It's on the sides of buildings. It's the biggest thing that they have going, you know? Like, half of the top 10 wealthiest people in Japan are comic book artists. And almost every other comic book artist can't make a living doing it there. It's a strange extreme that they have. So as far as, like, the potential for what comics can do, I saw it pretty early. I look at Peanuts and I think of Snoopy. I think of the Snoopy toys, blankets, and clothes and stuff that you might have with you, and it becomes a part of somebody's lifetime, whether it's Calvin and Hobbes or Peanuts or Garfield and The Far Side, things like that. I just didn't know if there was not too many people were doing long-form adventure stories at a highly successful, in a highly successful form. And Bone by Jeff Smith was a pioneering effort in that regard. It was one of the first. Yeah, good question.
Question on this side?
What inspired you to make the Amulet series?
What inspired me to do the Amulet series? Well, I wanted to. Okay, let's make this a long answer because I have time. When I was a kid, I wanted to design rides. I wanted to be an Imagineer. I wanted to design the next Pirates of the Caribbean or something. In fact, as a kid, I even built a flume ride with popsicle sticks, and I actually made channels for water and stuff, and I could not figure out how to get the water to the top of it. And I just made a mess of everything in the house. I just made a giant puddle. And yeah, I wanted to design rides. And then after that, I wanted to design these movies and things like that, or make movies. When I realized that people made movies, I was like, well, I'd like to do that. And so over time, though, in order to articulate this vision of things that I wanted to do, I was actually using comics, because it was the only thing that I could do at the time. I could draw a comic book and show somebody what I had in mind, because I think it's a really cool thing, and we'll see if somebody thinks it's good. And so it really started like that. It started with that, and then I was, getting offers to do comics, and they were the kind of comics I didn't want to do. And then I just thought, like, well, what am I going to do? I'm like, I don't fit anywhere. And then I read Bone, and I read Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind by Hayao Miyazaki. And to me, that was like reading like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia, by C.S. Lewis. Imagine seeing those two books for the first time when you're trying to be an author, like a fantasy. That's what it was like for me. And so when I read Nausicaa, I pretty much knew that I had to figure out how to do something like this sometime in my life. And I didn't care if it was a job. It was just something I would do, just because I thought it would be interesting. And, I'm very fortunate that my ambitions to do that timed very well with the way the world was working in terms of graphic novels. And so I ended up just able to ride this wave of sorts. But it's been a long time coming. I mean, I started working on Amulet over 20 years ago, about 20 years ago. And my next series is nearly as old as Amulet. And I'm looking forward to getting to work on that soon. So I do have another series in the works. All right.
Which of the Amulet books is your favorite?
Usually, these days, I've been telling people book 5. It changes depending on how I feel, and that's good, because that's how I wanted them to be. There's no one book for all times. But number 5 is up there, and I haven't even looked back at number 8 very much right now, because I'm still trying to forget that I had to work on that, because it was so hard. Yeah, I'd say number 5.
We have another question here.
Out of all the books you have made, how many books have been bought?
You mean how many books were sold?
Yeah.
I don't know. If you find out, let me know. It's hard to find out. I think there are a lot of books sold. That's what I'm told. Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's in the millions now. So, but like I said, when Amulet One came out, 300 copies, and now over 1 million. You got to stick with things. You never know how it'll play out. It's like, Russell Wilson, fourth quarter, down three scores. Can he do it? Can the team do it? It's exciting if they can. Most of the time, sometimes we almost got to the point where we expect it to happen, right? It's exciting. Any other questions?
What gave you the idea for Trellis's scar? I'm just wondering.
It's inspired by a comic called Blackjack. Osamu Tezuka is the creator of Astro Boy. I'd say Blackjack is probably my all-time favorite comic. If I had to pick one, the one that speaks to me, probably it'd be Blackjack. And Blackjack is a renegade surgeon who, through the power of surgery, goes and saves the world. You see, Tezuka was going to be a doctor, too. He actually went to medical school. He studied entomology in medical school, so he studied the study of bugs. But he was going to be a doctor, and he went into comics, and I relate to him quite a bit.
Do we have another question?
Do you do other forms of art?
Yeah, I do. I paint sometimes. I sometimes play music, but I'm terrible at it. I wish I was better at it. If there was one art form that I wish I was really good at that I'm not, and that would be music. Yeah, I don't I don't limit myself to just working on Amulet. However, when I have free time, I spend it doing other things. Well, for the most part, I'm spending time with my kids. Being somebody who was in the film industry, one of the things that I appreciate most about the job I have now is that I can prioritize my family. So I get to be there with the kids as they grow up. And my mom and dad were my mom especially was always there with me, and that was really important. So for me, it's really important that I have that. But yeah, as far as like free time stuff, I actually do a lot of mountain biking, especially because I live up here now. And yeah, I don't have many hobbies too. Just read a lot of nonfiction books to study. I actually don't read fiction that much. Yep, I'm answering questions that I haven't been asked.
Do we have another question here?
Did you have other ideas for comic books that you didn't use?
I have other ideas that I didn't use in Amulet. I have just tons and tons of ideas that I haven't used. Jason knows this. He always gets frustrated sometimes with me when I scrap a sequence of things that he thought was going to be cool, like Gablin's prison escape sequence that was supposed to open Amulet 7. Yeah, that was. There's a lot of little sequences that just don't see the light of day. Most of them, though, and Jason can also probably attest to this. Most of them are so bad that you wouldn't want it in the book. You'd be like, "What? You were seriously going to do that?" Yes, I almost did. Thankfully, I went to sleep and thought about it a little bit more.
Hey, I was just wondering why number 8 was particularly difficult for you.
Why number 8? I think it begins with this. The fact that I introduced science fiction into the series changed the whole thing. Whenever I do something, I like to feel like I've done my homework, that I've done my research, that I figured out how to do it before I do it. I thought science fiction would be just fun. Like, hey, go into space. That's cool. I'm going to have space elements. Then I didn't really, and then I started thinking about it. It's like, what is sci-fi, right? I've been doing fantasy, but what is science fiction? What is it? I was like, oh man. Oh no. I was like, okay, so fantasy's like a assessment of our past, and science fiction is like a treatise on our future. Oh no. So I started studying a lot of science fiction and science fact. Just tons of things like in Amulet 8. So like my brother is an incredible engineer. He's my biggest hero in my life. My little brother, and he does aerospace work for Boeing, and he's working on some stuff that's really spectacular and things. I'm sure I don't get to know about it because you're not supposed to. But I thought about kids like my brother growing up, and they were going to be scientists, and they're going to be really building the world, our future, and I really had to think about the things I'd like to talk to those kids about. And as a dad, that stuff means a lot more to me now, because you have to educate your kids, and it is my life now, so it became very very personal in that way. And so number 8 was really difficult because of the research I had to do. However, I'll say this, though, the research that I had to do was phenomenal. It was so interesting already, so it wasn't hard to do it, just hard to find the time to do everything that I had to do in this book. And I could go on for hours, actually, about all the difficult things that I learned while making it. But yeah, it was clearly the most difficult book since number 1.
Let's get your question here.
How long do you think number 9 will be, and when do you think it will be out?
How long do I don't know, actually. It's the last book, right? But I didn't want to make the books any longer. Because I add more pages. I feel like, so number 8 has the most stuff in it of all the books that I've made, but it's no longer than the previous books. It's just as short, just as long. But I put a lot more thought into the ideas of that are in there, that they could expand, in the reader's mind. And so, for the next book, I'm going to guess then that this next book will be no longer than 208 pages or 225 pages, because that's how long they've all been. And I've started working on it, but I've also started working on my next series as well. Just because I got to get ahead on it, I know I'm going to have to put a lot of extra years of homework and research and things like that. So I'm doing a lot of research right now. I'm in a research phase.
Going to get your question here.
How did you learn to draw, and when did you want to start being a writer and start drawing?
How did I learn to draw? I just started. I wasn't good when I started. It wasn't a natural thing for me. And honestly, I really don't think it is for anybody. But at the time, I just thought it wasn't. It's something that people said I was good at it, but I didn't think I was all that good. I just kept practicing it anyway, just to see if I could be better. But as far as writing goes, I had one teacher. I had an English teacher who read one of my essays and told me that I could be a professional writer. And I took that to heart. And so I started practicing in high school, started practicing my writing. For somebody who was born elsewhere, even though I'm a fourth generation Japanese American, so my great grandparents came here, but I was born in Tokyo because my mom went to college there. And so Japanese was my first language and English was my second. And I always kind of thought I wasn't as smart as everybody else because I was a few years behind. So the idea of being a professional at not only writing the language, but also speaking the language, like I'm speaking the language in front of you, right, in front of a lot of people, right? That it seemed so far removed, to hear my English teacher, who was a really difficult grader, she was really hard on the students because she really cared. Tell me, basically, she gave me on one of my essays, she gave me an A with 5 pluses on it, and then told me that I could be a professional writer, and very, almost, she looked alarmed. She grabbed me by the shoulders. She's like, "You could do this!" And I know you probably heard that story that I've told this 100 times. But yeah, Mrs. Blake, Doris Blake, Woodbridge High School. I owe her for just scaring me into becoming a professional writer. And then my teacher, Donna Cunningham at UC Santa Barbara, she saw my essays that I write. I would do critical analysis of movies, and she thought they were very good, and she felt I would be a very good filmmaker, and that was very helpful. So it's my teachers. So with these paintings, I can do this forever. I just get lost in them. You guys can tell what it is, right? Does it make sense? Okay, yeah. I heard a laugh, I don't know. It's like, I'm gonna assume that means it's clear.
If there's going to be a movie, when do you think it's going to come out? And what do you think?
Man, when you find out, let me know. I don't know. No, even my producers don't know. It's a long process. Making a movie is a lot of work. It's a lot of organization. And then when all the timing is right, and everything's working out, and all the people who are involved, their schedules all coalesce into one magic little moment where everybody can make the movie, then it'll happen. But until that moment, you're just waiting, and everybody's just preparing everything, and they got the script and all that stuff, and finding the right talent, and getting them ready to go, just in case they're ready to go. But the movie is not quite there yet, I don't think. We'll see. And if they don't make a movie, that's okay. I'm okay with that too. If they do, that'd be awesome, but if they don't, that's good. That's fine.
Do you think you are a illustrator or author?
I am both. Never more so as that I think about the significance of being both of those things when I did the covers for Harry Potter, because I was asked to just do the drawings, and I had to really try to put myself in Joanne Rowling's shoes, J.K. Rowling's shoes, and just think about how I'd like my own work if I were her. How would I want for people to look back on it and then present it in such a way that would reflect that? I wanted it to look like a perennial work of fiction that you would see on the shelf for years and years and years. It's just something that it's probably going to be the case for that book, and so I painted with that perspective. But in my case, the writing and the drawing go hand in hand. I write with my drawings, and I was going to say I draw with my writing, but I don't know if that one works as well. I guess that does. No, it's true, because that's the poetry of it, right? When I think of poems and things like that, I think of it as music and waves and stuff, and so I am writing a picture. So yeah, I think it goes hand in hand. When I'm lost on one side of it, I'll look to the other to find my way. I don't think I'm the kind of person in now that I don't think I could do one or the other. I'd have to do both. All right, so this is going to go on for a while. I don't know how long you guys want to ask questions. There's some more questions, so I'll go ahead and answer those. Thanks for coming, by the way. There's quite a few people. That's good.
Do you have any names in mind for the new series?
Yes and no. I'm trying not to. I'm just going to wait until I'm ready to go on that. But I have thought about it, of course, so I do have some things potentially in the works, but I'm not going to tell you. If that's what you're asking. Again, if you find out, let me know. I don't.
Okay. So who is Grandma Emily married to, like in The Void? The older Emily?
Hey. Let's watch out with those spoilers.
Oh, come on.
How many times do you go over a drawing before you're satisfied?
With my drawings, a couple times. The drawing part of it, I've sort of decided I'm good, generally good enough at that. Like I don't go back and redraw a lot. Sometimes I redesign characters when the design of a character has changed, and I think, they should look like this, or they should have this feature on their costume or something. That might be something I go back and change, but I try not to. I draw the pages over and over again, so I'd say 8 to 10 times. 8 to 10 times I'll redraw everything, but it's mostly for the story.
How many Amulet books are you gonna make?
9 Amulet books total. So number 9, the next one will be the last in the series. And then I work on other stuff. So I won't stop, but this story comes to an end in the next one.
When the Amulet movie comes out, will they be live action characters or cartoon?
The crew that's currently working on it, they're preparing for a live action movie, like a big live action spectacle, like a big movie, like several big ones. I just get to go to the theater and get some popcorn and go, whoa, that's crazy, someone did this. While I take my kids to arena sports. That's my life.
Why did you make Emily's dad die?
Well, my original draft of Amulet, I actually had the dad going on the journey with them. And then it became a story about the dad, and I decided that it shouldn't be that. It should be about the kids having to step into that role, and not a dad learning something on the journey, And I mean, that's a good story too. If you've seen movies like Night at the Museum, it's about a dad learning about being a dad. I mean, those are good stories. This was not that story. So, and partly because I didn't have my real dad to think about because he wasn't around, so I don't know him. And I didn't want it to be about that either, so I decided to just take him out of the equation and for the kids to have to sort of grow into this role of responsibility. But a lot of people do forget, and they're like, why would you kill the parents off, like in these Disney movies? But they forget that Karen is on this journey too. So their mom is growing up with the kids, and I think it's mostly reflective of my own life. My brother, me, my mom, just having to figure things out together. So, yeah. And also, that car accident scene was in part, influenced by this car accident that my mom was in when I was young. And it's the first time that my brother and I had to really think about whether or not we may not have any parents anymore. Because my mom was in the hospital. She was in a coma. It was a terrible accident. It was just on the front page of our local news. The station wagon, the Ford Country Square that we used to always be in, was completely totaled, and thankfully, it happened before my mom picked us up because I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be here because there were no seat belts. There were seat belts in there, but nobody ever used them, It's back in the 80s. So, yeah, I thought about that a lot as a kid. So I depicted it in such a way in the book.
Where do you do your work?
Oh, what's that?
Where do you do your work?
Oh, I do the work I have a home office, and I also have an office that I go to. My wife and I and Jason will meet up at this office that we set up near my kids' school. So when my wife and I drop off our kids, we can go to the office for a few hours and work there. And eventually we have to pack it up and go home about 3 o'clock when we pick them up. And then we work at home. We have an office there too. We used to have a studio space that we used to go to, but this is before we had kids and had a family. And so everything kind of revolves around the family schedules. Jason, he's also a dad.
Why did you name Navin and Emily and Trellis Navin, Emily, and Trellis?
Yeah, Trellis. Yeah, I don't even remember how that happened, but I mean, a trellis is something that I always saw when I was working in architecture. Just a structure. But I think I had his name before that. Yeah, I don't remember how trellis came about. For Emily, it was probably because my little sister's name is Emmy, and I just wanted to name the character M, and so Emily would be the long form for that. Navin was named after a Steve Martin movie in the 80s called The Jerk. The parents are laughing now because they know this movie. In one version of the story, that was the dad's favorite movie. And he wasn't like the best dad. So he named his son after The Jerk. And I thought that was funny. And eventually it just stuck, and I just thought, that's actually a cool name. And so a lot of people think it's an Indian name, Navin, which if people want to believe that, that's fine too. That's cool. Navin's a good name. But that's how those names came about.
How did you design the Emily after she was taken over by the amulet?
Let's see. Why did I? Yeah, that was. How did I design that? I mean, she was going to be a firebird, so I knew that. So I needed to make a bird that was made of fire, and that's what she is. So yeah, no, I didn't. Yeah, when she turns into the phoenix, it was mostly how can we draw fire without it being like a constant light source? Like it would just be so bright, like then you can't really draw it very well. So I just designed the shape, and I just thought of it as a graphic like image, and tried to make it flowy and built it off of the idea that it's flowing in the wind. And also I wanted it to kind of mimic the voice as well, so that they both have this kind of liquid, like kind of viscous form. So it was a bird, but it was also like this kind of blob, liquid blob. Okay. Does that make sense? All right, so I didn't color dodge this yet, but here I'll lighten it up a little bit. Yeah, so what's neat about this program is that you can go in there and add lighting to your paintings. Something I can't do on a canvas unless I painted the light, which is very difficult to do. Jason and I think on our more recent works, we try as much as we can to not use these effects and just sort of paint everything purely based on by applying the color. That tends to look better, but in a pinch, these types of effects, can be pretty helpful. All right, so now that, we should probably get to the signing, so we don't keep you all here for too long. But let's answer. There's a couple more questions here. Maybe answer. How many more questions do we have time for?
Do a couple more.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
What is kind of the ratio of how much time you create a graphic novel?
What's the ratio of time spent on? Do you mean like for the writing as opposed to the drawing?
Like, how long does it take for you to draw a comic?
Graphic
novel.
Well, Scholastic would like me to do one every year. I tried that, and I nearly died because of just how difficult this is. Plus, I'm on the road all the time between books. And so I can't always be, working on the book. In the case of Amulet 8, it was close to a full 2 years, so about 1.5 years to 2 years to make that book. In Amulet 1, we really didn't have that much time. I was given 6 months to do it, and then the second and third books, I had 6 months to do it. And I was asked to match the speed at which Steve Hamaker painted Bone. And I had to write and draw and paint the books. It was a little too much. We weren't able to keep that up. So now we have a slower pace. But I'd say to do a pretty decent book, about 1.5 years to 2 years to make one. Now, that's what I would recommend.
Maybe one more question here.
Okay.
Why did you decide to base most of the books on Emily?
On Emily? It's almost all based around her, really. She is the main character, and everyone else is supporting. So yeah, it was always her journey in my mind, and it kind of extended from around her. Like when there's other characters in, they're really her support. Kind of showing you, like with Navin's character, he's so, he's so grounded, right? And he's finding ways to support his family. I thought like that's, it's because Emily is having to take on too much of a load, more than she might be able to handle. So yeah, it's based around a lot of Emily's emotions. Okay. All right, so I can paint all night, guys, but probably want to get home and get some sleep because we got to sign books. So I'm just going to go ahead and I think we'll just end that here, and then we'll get to the signing part. But thanks for the questions and for coming out.